Hello everybody and welcome back to Red Eagle Politics. Make sure you like this video down below and subscribe to the channel if you are new. So it's been a while since we talked about Georgia on the channel in terms of the Georgia Senate race, and there have been a lot of recent developments in this race. Of course, you have the Herschel Walker scandal coming to light again. You have his son turning on him, his son that supported him for months and months on end enthusiastically. Now he's been in hot water. He's been in hot water by a lot of media over the past few weeks or so because of this, and he's going up against Raphael Warnock, the incumbent Democrat senator in the state of Georgia here. And I wanted to analyze this race in depth in this video. Is Herschel Walker actually doomed? Because I continue to believe that he's not. And it's important for people to understand the so-called scandal. Some elements may be more true of it than others. But either way, you look at this and you see the fact that there's a lot of people who will claim to oppose him because of this. There was already domestic abuse allegations in his past. A lot of people opposed him based off of that fact alone. And we talk about this era of hyperpolarization of politics, and you talk about Herschel Walker having the celebrity factor. A lot of people loved this guy when he was their star football player at the University of Georgia. Is it going to really stick, or is it going to bounce off, and will he be able to ride that in a red wave year where Brian Kemp is poised to beat Abrams by 7 or so to a wave of victory for Herschel Walker? We're going to cover it in this video more in depth, but first, I have to tell you guys about our latest sponsor over at the Veteran Challenge coin. And veteran suicides have been going through the roof lately. It's been reported that at least 22 veterans commit suicide every single day, but recent studies show the actual rate may be much higher than that. This is an absolute tragedy. We must support our veterans now more than ever, and you could do so by getting a Veteran Challenge coin. You can claim the coin for free by clicking the link in the description or pinned comment down below. Just cover shipping. It comes with a 60-day satisfaction guarantee for a limited time only while supplies last. So, the polls are changing a little bit in this race since the scandal dropped, the so-called scandal. You have Herschel Walker being accused of making his son move 6 times in 6 months because of fear of violence. You also have him being accused of paying a woman to have an abortion about 10, 15 years ago or so. That woman actually supported Walker's campaign for a great portion of it, and there's not really any proof of that whatsoever. But his son, Christian Walker, who's probably not the most palatable source to relay this information, by the way, which is another important thing. I mean, a lot of people on the right and the left, they view him as very obnoxious, very interesting fellow, to put it nicely there. But either way, it doesn't seem like the scandal is dooming him too much. There has been a little bit of movement in some of these recent polls, but there hasn't been a ridiculous amount to say, oh, this is going to doom him. And keep in mind, the polls are going to show more movement early on in the scandal. There's definitely the shy voter effect at play as well. And as the weeks go on leading up to the election, it's going to fade a little bit, and Walker will likely start to do a little bit better. You saw a dip in the polls for Trump about the Access Hollywood tape, the Access Hollywood comment. I don't exactly believe that that ended up hurting him too much at the end of the day, even at the time. Not only was it taken vastly out of context by the media, and it kind of exposed how evil that the Hillary Clinton campaign truly was in terms of the aftermath of it, but either way, it's kind of just the shy voter effect. Where people really don't want to say that they support a certain candidate just because of a recent development, even though they most likely will, because they're not going to vote for the other guy. And you'll probably see a very similar thing happen here. And you look at the recent polls, and we see a dip for Herschel Walker, but those voters are not going to Warnock. Those voters are probably going to come home for Herschel Walker, and in some recent polls that may actually be the case. Although there was a poll in the aggregate that was downright awful, the Survey USA poll, which we can't really ignore because they're always awful. They had Warnock up by 12. This was taken after the initial scandal. You had the Atlanta Journal-Constitution release a poll that was partially conducted after this as well that showed movement in favor of Raphael Warnock by a couple of points or so there. A net of 5, but it still showed 11% to be undecided. Furthermore, you look at the Fox 5 Insider Advantage poll. That one shows Warnock gaining quite a little bit. It's flipped on its head from the previous poll. Then you look at the Hill or Emerson. They have Warnock up by just 2 within the margin of error. Again, he's below 50. Quinnipiac, an awful pollster. We know all about Quinnipiac and how much of a train wreck it truly is. That only shows Warnock gaining 1 point, and this poll was conducted 100% after the scandal took place, and it actually just showed Walker dip by 1. And then you look at Trafalgar. Trafalgar, in their most recent poll, they had Walker up 48-47. Now Warnock is up 46-45. So you have more undecided voters. A lot of them are probably going to come back on board. But either way, Warnock cannot get above 50% in a legitimate poll to save his life, not counting Quinnipiac, by the way. And that's really a problem for Raphael Warnock, because he is an incumbent. He should be above 50% if he wants to lock this victory in. But Walker, a lot of the undecideds in these polls disapprove of Joe Biden. He's down there at 45%. And a lot of voters may not be fully on board with Walker based off of the scandal, but they don't like Raphael Warnock either. Again, he's somebody who's voted with Biden 96% of the time in a toss-up state. That is not going to bode well among independent voters, especially those voters who are going to be voting for Brian Kemp over Stacey Abrams this fall. And you look at him on every single issue. He's got an F from the NRA on guns. He's 100%. He calls himself the pro-choice pastor, kind of an oxymoron there, 100% pro-abortion. You look at him on immigration, very weak on immigration, supports $15 minimum wage as well. And he threw a temper tantrum about Georgia's new election laws that were passed in 2021, which might end up helping Republicans as well at the end of the day in the state of Georgia. So either way, you look at the state of Georgia, you look at the state of this race as well, it seems as if there is a path for Herschel Walker. The debate is coming up in a few days, which is going to be very interesting. He's going to have to perform decently. The expectations have already been set for Walker, and they are extremely low. Although doing better than Kelly Loeffler is not exactly that much of a stretch based off of how unlikable she came off. Herschel Walker, he's a more, simple-spoken Southern boy, as he put it. That's his words right there. He went out there and he decided to frame himself as the loser of the debate before it even started, similar to how George W. Bush did back in the day. And it seems as if it may pay off if he outperforms expectations, because that's all he really has to do in this debate. And I'm sure he's been practicing, by the way. And in terms of the scandals and skeletons in closets regarding domestic abuse, Raphael Warnock allegedly ran over his wife's foot with a car back in the day. He got arrested for domestic violence as well. The notion that he's got a squeaky clean past is ridiculous, but this is mainly about policy, not his personal life. We could attack him on that, of course, as a rebuttal, but either way, most people are voting on policy, and they do not like the policies of Joe Biden and Raphael Warnock, which is something that's very important to note. And in terms of the path for victory, even Nate Plastic has Herschel Walker with a 40% chance at victory. That's really saying something. He gives him a higher chance than he gives Dr. Oz and Blake Masters. Personally, I think Masters and Oz have more of an upward trajectory for their campaigns. I think that this one, Herschel is probably either going to win it or it will go to a runoff, which will take place a month or two after the election, although I think he would win a runoff this time. And the reason why is because Republican voters, a lot of the base that didn't turn out for the initial runoff, would turn out for Walker in this runoff more so than they would somebody like Kelly Loeffler or David Perdue, both of which were either corrupt or boring. And this is very true. And you look at the fact that Republicans historically have turned out more in runoffs. In Georgia, 2020 was the exception. I think going to a runoff doesn't necessarily mean that Warnock is going to win there, which is true. So we'll have to wait and see what happens. But either way, I think Warnock could go down outright. You look at Georgia. This is a state where you just have to do marginally better than Trump did in 2020 in a lot of these suburban counties in suburban Atlanta. These counties have moved left since 1980. They've moved vastly to the left. They've grown. They've changed demographically speaking. They're not exactly how they used to be even in 2004 or 2012. People will blame Trump for that change, But either way, I think that it's a lot deeper than just Trump because it's been happening for quite some time, even if you want to say that Donald Trump helped accelerate it. But either way, let's move these counties to the right by, let's even just say 1 point in each county, which Brian Kemp, he may have some down ballot coattails because, again, you look at the polls for the governor's race and you could look at them and you could see the fact that Kemp is up by 5. Is he really going to outrun Herschel Walker by 7 percentage points or so in the state of Georgia? Is he really? I can't see that happening, but he's above 50 in every poll. He's probably going to win handily. And a lot of the other candidates that are up are probably going to win handily statewide, which will probably be enough to carry Walker over the finish line. Like I said, Warnock is nothing exceptional. He also has skeletons in his closet. He's not some blue dog Democrat. He votes with Biden nearly 100% of the time, which is very important to note. But you just shift these counties right by 1 point and assume that rural areas turnout is pretty much even with 2020 in terms of a percentage-wise of the state as a whole, and you see Republicans will win the state of Georgia. Just a 1% shift in those counties. And that doesn't even take into account black turnout dropping in Atlanta, which may happen because this is a midterm year where Republicans have the energy factor and a lot of minority voters, they don't exactly strongly approve of Biden. It does not mean they're going to vote Republican. It just means that they're not going to be as enthusiastic to turn out and vote Democrat, which is going to hurt Democrats in the South. It's going to hurt them in North Carolina even more. It's going to hurt them in Georgia. It's probably going to hurt them in Texas among Hispanic voters in some places, Arizona. Although Republicans seem to be adding some Hispanics to their column, we don't exactly know what the breaking point is percentage-wise for them, but it's possible they could do better, and you'll see Democrat turnout drop overall. But either way, it seems as if the math is fairly easy. The Georgia suburbs have been moving away. I'm not going to discount that. The state very may well be gone for good after 2024. I know it's not something a lot of people like to hear. Some people might say otherwise, but either way, the math that we've seen since the 80s in the state, it's just changing. It's changing too fast. I'm not saying it's going to be like, Illinois or California, but could it very well be the new Virginia? Absolutely. Which is something to note in the state of Georgia there. So either way, this is still a dogfight. This is still a toss-up. I think that Walker, if anything, I would say he's favored just because of the energy factor alone. The polls right now, he might be down by a couple of points or so, but you have a long way to go. I mean, he was leading the polls despite being outspent 3-1 by Warnock, which is important to take into consideration as well. And the fact is, the scandal, when it eventually blows over to a certain degree, you'll see him come back in some of the polls ahead of Election Day, and he's likely either going to win outright or it's going to go to a runoff where he will still, in my opinion, be narrowly favored. So anyways, guys, thanks for watching this video. Like this video down below, comment down below, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell for notifications so you never miss another video. Follow me on social media. The links are all in the description down below. As always, guys, thanks for watching. Red Eagle, out.